This is StoryRobot. Welcome to r/Tales from Call Centers. Our first story of today is Customer Fakes Heart Attack. I used to work customer service at call center for any of the large prison phone contractors in the US. As such, our level of crazy, belligerent calls was a little higher than in some other fields. I'll be the first to admit some of the complaints we heard truly were a mixed bag of craziness on the customer's side and poor services on the company's side. Now, I have a pretty thick hide, but this is one of the few calls that shook me. So, I took a call one evening from across the country. The woman on the line sounded older, a bit peeved, but otherwise pleasant enough. I started by pulling up her number, and the first thing I notice is the account has been accessed, a lot, by our agents. Unfortunately, due to the practices of our call center, notes in general were often non-existent or extremely sparse. I do, however, see quite a few tickets made to the tech team. Customer goes on to explain how terrible the service and how her loved one can never get through and that she can't accept calls. She goes on to explain that she is a pretty prominent figure in her city. Which actually was true, surprisingly enough. Our call center did not allow for placing customers on hold. I mean, you could, but it killed your metrics. I'm told the company's contracts actually called for under X amount of hold time for the customer. So I was pretty much prompting her to continue her ranting with lowball questions about what she was experiencing with the calls when they couldn't connect while I look up call records and such. During the course of this, she mentions several times how she has heart issues and how important it is for her loved one to be able to connect the calls when he makes them. This would be all fine and good, as I was actually quite good at my job. I knew all the little tricks with our phone system and various carriers and how to fix them. However, as I'm looking through the records, the issue is her loved one just isn't calling. Sadly enough, this is pretty common. For whatever reason, some people in jail or prison just do not call, even when their loved ones keep balances on the phone accounts. When they do finally call such and such person funding their phone time, it seems the common excuse is, such and such company just beeps. I call but it doesn't go through. The thing is, if the phone at the jail is connected and the number is dialed, with our system I would see that the number was dialed. Even if they only let it ring for half a second, if the phone had a dial tone, I would at least see it as a call attempt. At this point, I know it's going to be a bad call. I double-checked the handful of last tickets opened, and sure enough they were all for the same thing, and all of them were answered with no calls being made. With no other option, I start breaking the news to Mrs. Prominent Figure. While I'm explaining, I cue the last few calls she received, all of which connected for the max allotted time for the facility or close to it, just to be sure audio quality was okay. Jail phone calls are never crystal clear, but there is only so much you can do about that with normal cell block noise in the background. I explained to her I've seen the other calls she's made to the company, and double-checked her tickets, and that on all of them the techs found there was no problems calling out to her line and that they all show the inmate not calling. I explain I've checked the call records to her number and give her the times and dates for her last 2 months of calls. All the while she just gets more and more agitated. She keeps circling back to how important she is and how it's impossible that they aren't calling her. Mrs. Prominent Figure begins telling me how awful I am for doing this to an old woman and saying that I'm giving her chest pains. I try my best to keep her calm while also explaining that there is nothing we can do to force her loved one to call. She demands a supervisor. Unfortunately, I was an escalations agent and our soups did not take inbound phone calls. She begins making pained croaking, gasping noises and disconnects the line. I had spent the last few years of my father's life as his caregiver while he was awaiting a heart transplant with an LVAD unit implanted on his heart. The last time I had heard those types of sounds was when my dad would regularly go into congestive heart failure prior to his LVAD unit. It is a very distinct way of gasping for air, and I have to assume was intentional. I did call her city's non-emergency number, for lack of really knowing what else to do. My supervisor told me to take my next call or use my own time to call it in, and explained what happened, provided name, address, and phone number. That was the last I really heard of it on any official level. I googled her name, which is how I know she was in fact a prominent figure. Prominent enough that if she had been rushed to the hospital there should have been a headline about it, if only to announce the disruption in the work she had been doing. Our final story of today is, client got cancelled cause he can't be bothered to monitor his affairs and it's our fault. So, I work for a well-known insurer in my area in billing services. Now our policy in the event of non-payment of the policy is to contact by phone and email the client and try to make arrangements. In the event the client does not respect his arrangement, we then proceed to cancel the policy for non-payment, at which moment we send a registered letter to notify the client of the situation, the leftover balance to be paid, and of course the exact date at which his insurance will end. By law, we are required to give 10 days for home policies and 30 days for car policies between the moment we send this letter and the actual cancellation. This is in fact so the client has time to find another insurer and thus does not fall into the hell of being uninsured for a time. Sorry for the long explanation, but it sort of informs the call I had to deal with today. So, the client was transferred to me via our customer service, whom he'd called because he'd lost his proof of insurance and wanted a new copy, only to be told he wouldn't be getting anything since he was cancelled. So I get the client and he is pissed. Now this particular client had missed 4 consecutive payments from June 2020 to September 2020 and made arrangement with a colleague in September 2020 to cover 2 months immediately and the 2 remaining months over the next 4 weeks. The first payment went through no problem. After that though, he put a stop payment on our debits. So we cancelled his car and home policies. My next step is to inform him that since the policy has been cancelled for a few months, we cannot reactivate it, nor can we issue a new policy. On top of that, he still owes us a little under $600 for the time he was insured that he did not pay. He does not take this information well, to say the least. He counters with a reasonable offer and says he'd be willing to pay all the unpaid months in a week in exchange for immediate reinstatement of both policies. Now sadly, procedure says an unequivocal no to that, but I am allowed a certain leeway if a client has a good explanation. So I ask politely what happened and why he put a stop payment on our debits. He answers that he just didn't have the money. Okay, so, what, you lost your job, you were sick, what? Basically I opened the door for him to give me something to work with, but he refused to take the hint. He then starts tearing into me because he claims he never received the registered letter we sent to notify him of the cancellation of service. I checked the tracking and yeah, he didn't get it. It was returned to sender because he never went to the post office to pick it up. It spent 2 weeks in their depot waiting for him to claim it. So I asked if he got a card at his door for him to pick up some mail. His answer was yeah, but I didn't think it was important. This is the moment I decided that I was done helping. At this point, I go back to procedures. I'm sorry sir, but the policy has been cancelled for months. At this point I would recommend you contact other insurers to obtain a new policy. Also, a bill was sent for a balance of X dollar. You can make a payment yourself or make arrangements with the collection agency that will be contacting you in the next few days. I wish you good luck. His response kills me. So that's it, you won't take any responsibility for this. Your company is great until we need you, blah blah blah. I answer, well sir, I'm sorry you feel that way, but let's go over the facts. 1. You missed many payments. 2. You couldn't respect your own promise. 3. You didn't contact us before or after the stop payments to try to work something out. 4. You left a notice sent by registered mail to rot in the post office. 5. You didn't bother to follow up when the monthly payments weren't being withdrawn anymore. I paused a bit, taking a breath to proceed, and then an unnamed woman got on the line and basically demanded I explain the situation. So I repeat my breakdown of the events, explain the policy is cancelled. She follows that with a very calm, very relaxed, "We are so going to sue your beep." I'm dumbfounded and stupidly ask, "What for?" She answers that the car was involved in an accident with 4 others because he was driving in the winter on 4-season tires and lost control. I basically laughed in their faces, wished them a good day and good luck, and asked if there was anything else I could do today. They were silent, so I took that to mean we were done and hung up. I'll never understand how people can screw up so totally. Thank you for watching. Error. Problem detected. Not enough subscribers. Please subscribe, like and comment.